Welcome to the Missouri Instructional Leaders Network, where we bring together Missouri instructional leaders to share their experiences, grow professional relationships, and build curriculum instruction skills. And got a couple more people in the waiting room I will let in. My name is Valerie Montgomery, and I am one of the hosts here. And this morning we are diving deep into the topic of reading success plans, something that a challenge that we're all trying to navigate. This morning we have a special guest, Miss Jessica Gray from Pleasant Hope School District. Good morning, Jessica.
Good morning.
And thank you so much for being here. She's going to walk us through some of the things she's done in her district and just share her knowledge on this topic. And as she's presenting, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So Jessica, I'm going to hand it over to you. You should be able to share your screen.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see if I can get the right thing going here. All right. As Valerie said, my name is Jessica Gray, and I'm a Title I Reading Interventionist for the Pleasant Hope School District. We're about 15 minutes north of Springfield, if you're not sure where that is. It's a smaller district that's kind of nestled between Halfway and Springfield. I have been a teacher for 10 years. This is my 10th year in education. I've taught K-6. I've served as a curriculum director. I've got my master's in elementary math, which is kind of jars people because I'm doing reading at this point. But I went through letters training last year, and reading has always been a good passion of mine. And I'm a mom, so just like everybody else, it's been kind of crazy navigating this time and things in education as a mom and an educator. But I made this slideshow in this presentation for our staff. We have 2 reading interventionists in our building, and we, as a school, as our building, decided that we wanted to try and take things off teachers' plates. And so my administrator and my other teaching partner for title, we actually decided we were going to take on the task of writing these RSPs for our teachers. And it's been a huge task for 2 people. We're hoping next year our teachers are going to be able to take a little bit more role in it, but we really sat down and looked through all the data that the state was giving, which is hard to find and limited at times. We use iReady as our state approved assessment, which has helped tremendously. I know that others are using different things, and so all of that won't be the same necessarily on how we got our data and decided what kids were on plans, but they worked really closely with the state in helping us decide what kids qualified and what our cut scores were and things like that. We started looking for qualifiers based on the state plan. And we really just focused on getting all of those assessments done at the beginning. First grade obviously was a really strange, I feel like, grade level because you only have one qualifier. And at that age, phonemic awareness for iReady is the very beginning of the assessment. And so we really felt like we saw a lot of kids that qualified for a plan that maybe necessarily didn't need one. So we're trying to navigate through that and how we present that to parents, especially since you have to have 2 consecutive test scores to get out of a plan. And as of now, some other people in the chat may have a better clarification, but we were told that December doesn't count because it's not mandated by the state to give a mid-year assessment. So we're working through that also with our plans and how we wrote them. When we decided to write our plans, we looked at the state document that DESE set out, and we focused all of our goals around priority standards. We tried to create goals based on the specific areas that kids could qualify for. So phonemic awareness, phonics, comprehension, vocabulary. We tried to pull all of those. We recently adopted StepUp proficiency scales, and Shauna actually came to our school a couple months ago, and we were working with our teachers on setting our scope and sequences. So we kind of had that familiarity with the program, and we really decided we wanted to use it to help us write and create our goals. So we created an Excel document that, using StepUp, we decided what standards we were going to focus on, and we wrote a goal for each standard. This is an example of first grade. And we divided it by topic for our teachers so that our teachers are able to come look at this document specifically when they're looking at their students' reading success plans and find the standard, find the goal it's aligned to. And then we also created intervention type plans to put in those areas and those boxes to cover for the state. We used a variety of intervention plans. Our K1 is really focusing on tier 1 instruction this year and how we can more effectively teach our tier 1 instruction to hit some of these areas, especially in that first grade realm of phonemic awareness. So some of our kids have tier 1 instruction goals, and all of them have at least one tier 2 area. We had around 47 to 50 kids that qualified for a plan. And with only 2 of us, we knew it was going to be hard for our team to provide intervention services for all of those kids. So we made sure that we were very specific in putting in the plan for parents that they will be receiving tier 2 instruction from a teacher or from Title I. So they know that if they're not being pulled for title services, they will still be receiving an intervention within their classroom during small group time and things like that. And we've been focusing on intentional small group and how we can pull from those areas. This is an example of third grade. So they have fluency, comprehension. We were able to pull again from our Step Up program, and I'll show you on the other side, we have assessments where we linked all of our assessments that we used or are using. So our teachers have access to that as we progress monitor. When the teachers highlight over this yellow box, it pulls up a proficiency scale, which is from Step Up that Shauna has created and her team. And it pulls up exactly what, I'll scroll to the next one. This is what a proficiency scale from her would look like. We've really pointed out to our teachers, this is what we want them to be able to do at a 3, and it gives that consistency of list in this area for decoding. So the teachers can pull the list from this document specifically, and we know that we have that fidelity across the grade level for assessment and what it is we're expecting our kids to be able to do at a 3. It's really, our teachers have said this has really helped having this know exactly what it is their kids are needing to do to move on to that next step, or like, where are they? It doesn't show it on here, but they have a 4, 3, and a 2 and a 1 proficiency scale. And so a lot of our students are riding around that 2 area. And what can we do to push them up to that 3 so that hopefully come next assessment time for iReady, we are seeing our kids show a lot of growth in the areas that they're lacking in. This has also been a great document for parents. I know I had a couple teachers show parents specifically this standard and say, this is what your child should be able to do at this grade level, but this is where they're performing. And seeing it, being able to flip through the book has helped our staff tremendously navigate some of these goals and things that they need for their students. This is what our plan looks like. I created this plan based on the state document. It's like reading. Sorry, my walkie's still on. Our plan, I just made it fancier, I guess, than what the state gave and actually accessible to use for our district. It's in a Google document spreadsheet, and teachers and staff, our administrative staff, have the ability to come in and manipulate these. But this is just, there's nothing really changed from what the state gave us. Since we've made these, there are some changes I know that we will make next year. There's a lot of other districts that have added drop-down boxes and a lot of things that I feel like are more beneficial. So I'm hoping as the year goes on, we'll be able to see more of those things that will save us time throughout. The second page lists all their goals. This is a page we gave parents, and that first page I showed you is something we actually gave our parents at conferences. It lists their goal and their intervention plan based around that goal. And we marked what areas they need. This is a student, this is the same student as before. This student has an IEP, but their IEP is not a reading goal. I covered up their name, so I can't remember exactly what student this is, but even though you have kids that have IEPs, if they don't have a specific reading goal, they will still need an RSP. And so we've went through that. First grade's kind of an anomaly because their only qualifier is phonemic awareness. So we have several different ones, but we also took into consideration that this student in particular also, they did not know their letters and sounds. And so we added a goal for that, even though that's not necessarily a topic that they qualify in. We know that's something that's only going to help them be a great reader. We went ahead and just made that judgment call and added that in. This is an example of a fourth grader. Based on their iReady test, they averaged second grade is where they fell. And so we gave them second grade standards. This was one of those things that was hard for parents coming in, as the feedback from teachers that they got was, why are you teaching my student a second grade standard when they're in fifth grade? So we talked about that, we're meeting them where they are. We need them to be able to come up to that fourth grade standard, and that's not just going to magically happen. And so we're really scaling back on what is it that they are doing right and what do they need to work on in what areas. So even though we have a fourth grade student here, they have second grade standards that they are receiving instruction on in their small group time, either with a teacher or us pulling them in title reading. At this time, we don't have any kids in tier 3, so we're not pulling one-on-one yet. That's going to come later as we try to navigate the amount of kids on a plan and how they're working for us. And you notice too that there are some of them have tier 1 instruction and tier 2 in the same box, because we know that we're going to be hitting those areas both in tier 1 and tier 2 for those kids. This is the other page we gave at conferences. We went ahead and had, the state says that parents are required to sign, you need to have a parent signature for these to prove that they received their plan. So we went ahead and had the parents sign at conferences that they had received the plan, seen the plan. We also gave them a copy of this page so that they knew when communication was coming home, and we already had typed that out. So we sent initial diagnostic scores in September. We met with them at conferences. We'll send again in January. We'll meet with them again at March at our spring conferences. And then, of course, the end of the year documentation. For our progress monitoring, I feel like is the thing we're still really trying to navigate and we have struggled with. This, again, we just copied this from what the state gave us. But this is our progress monitoring page that we have not given parents. We are keeping this document until the end of that summative 6 weeks, and then we'll send this home with the data from the kids' progress monitoring. We have used a variety, just depending on what we're using. Hegarty this year, and so for phonemic awareness, we've used Hegarty has benchmarks and progress monitoring assessments. iReady is also developed and released recently a lot of helpful assessments if you use iReady for progress monitoring. We are progress monitoring every 2 weeks, and at the end of every 6, we'll send this page home based on their goal. And we kind of let parents know not every goal will necessarily be progress monitored at 6 weeks, but that is eventually our goal at the end would be to get that consecutively down, but they know to expect something every 6 weeks as an update on how their kids are doing, what progress they're doing. And our plan as of this time is to just send home a little something short that they can help with them at home, depending on what it is that's science of reading based that they can help with at home. That's really my whole spiel. I feel like I talked a lot. So if you guys have questions, let me know. I can go back to any of the slides or share anything.
I have a question, Jessica. You
Yeah.
mentioned, so the form that you all used, you really started with the guidance from Desi.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that it's kind of morphed along the way. So I was wondering if you could just kind of tell us about like maybe the adjustments or like adaptations you've made to it that maybe would be like a shortcut for some of us who are still working on it.
Yeah. So we, I don't know necessarily about shortcuts. I feel like we really tried to just stick with it because we didn't know. It's hard to understand how they're going to be able to collect all this information and really with fidelity across all the schools in the state. How are they going to keep up with all of this information? So we tried to just make it as meaningful as possible, but some of the ways that we changed it was, if you look at the state document on this page, it doesn't say implementation intervention plan. It said something else completely that as a staff, we were like, what does that even mean? Like, what are we supposed to put here? And it was almost like we had to list the goal twice. So we kind of changed some of the verbiage for parents understanding and trying to get some of that. Our plan is we don't have anything currently that really specifies orthography, syntax, because we're a K-4 building. So we might get there eventually, but those are some things we're probably going to take off as we go further in and just focus on those really main areas since we're a K-4 building. Our 5th grade building, I think we'll end up keeping those just depending on what kind of assessment they're giving, but iReady doesn't really give us a lot of strong data in syntax. It's more teacher observation. And I think that's been another big piece too, is how do we navigate teacher observation when maybe they're doing well on iReady, but they're not doing well in the classroom? And how do we navigate, putting them on a plan aside from just the data? Because Desi states per teacher intervention or per teacher documentation, you can put any kid on a plan, but it's really hard to justify putting kids on a plan if you don't have that iReady data saying this is, for a parent perspective. We had a lot of parents concerned. This looks a lot like an IEP. We had a lot of parents, really have that concern about, what are we going to do? It's kind of a big deal. And we just tried to relay the information that, this is things we are really already doing in our building. These are things we have already been having in place for your students. We've just never had to put it on paper in documentation form like this. And so that's really just what this is, it's nothing new. They're not getting necessarily anything different than they would have if we wouldn't have wrote this all out on paper and had you sign it. But we still had a lot of parents with a lot of questions, but really the language is what we changed. So like that implementation intervention plan, if you look at the state documents, changed, and there's a couple other languages we changed to throughout. I think the at-home guidance and the strategy we changed just to kind of make it a little bit more parent friendly in terms of language.
Anybody else have any questions? I can keep asking, but I don't want to hog all the airtime. Can you give us a little bit more, like, can you tell us your communication plan with parents? I was telling Jessica before we got started, I have a 1st grader, and there was some information sent home to all parents about the reading success plan, and it dawned on me what this might, from a parent's perspective, this is new to them as well. And so, yeah, if you could just share that kind of communication to home and what that's been like for you.
On this way, we're coming up on our first progress monitoring assessment. But when we progress monitor, every 6 weeks, we'll send this page home detailing their scores and the assessments we used. Our plan is to use consistent assessments for progress monitoring, which is kind of difficult if you're basing it off iReady. So we used iReady as our initial, like, this is how they qualify. And then we gave our kids, we gave a variety because there's not really one great assessment that we've been able to find that covers all of these areas. So we've kind of pieced together things, but as a building, we're using Hegarty. So Hegarty has a benchmark and it also has progress monitoring assessments. So in this case, if it was a first grader, we would document those assessments here. And then at the end of 6 weeks, we would send this home, giving those progress notes to parents saying they're achieving their goal, they're making gains, or they're not making gains. This is what we're going to do instead. Down there at the bottom, it has the implementation plan outline and a revised goal. So if we feel like they're already meeting their goal by the end of 6 weeks and they need something different to keep moving forward, this is a point where we would change that and let parents know, and keeping that documentation intact. We've used the Dibbles also for benchmark assessment and progress monitoring because they have just an ease of being able to get that done effectively and efficiently for teachers. Teachers are in charge of progress monitoring. Like I said before, our staff, our administrative staff wrote the goals. We presented this to the teachers, and then we have binders for them that we have created that have all of their progress monitoring assessments. So they just, at the end of 2 weeks, we gave them a calendar. They know when they're supposed to give them. And then we take the binders back, enter all the data in for them to kind of take that off their plate. And then at the end of 6 weeks, we print these out to send home to parents. But our goal is every 6 weeks, we send something different home, kind of giving them an update on how they're doing.
So it's probably a little early to tell, but could you talk a little bit about like the role of teacher professional development in this?
So we have PD Mondays. We're a 4-day school week, and once a month we have a PD Monday, and we're focusing a lot. All of our teachers in the building this year are either going through unit 2 of letters or unit 1. And so that's been a big shift for us on how we can work on our tier 1 instruction and implement that. We're also kind of going through a curriculum review as a building, deciding what's working and what's not. What does our current resources use? What current resources do we use that we feel like hits some of these areas and these marks, and what do we have that's lacking? So we're using a lot of our professional development, trying to find and get educated in those science of reading based things that a lot of people are already doing, but just kind of getting that shift of more tier 1 versus just tier 2 instruction when it comes to those things and how we can adapt that way. But our biggest PD this year is everybody. We have a cohort doing letters at our building. So.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I was just going to ask Jessica, I noticed you took a lot of this off the teachers' plates, and it sounds like you guys created this. So your plan going forward, and I think you said it at the beginning, are you kind of hoping that the teachers are going to take this on then next year, or how do you kind of see that?
That is our hope. So now that we have created these documentations for them to copy and paste, we tried to create something that we knew next year teachers would easily be able to say, okay, this is the area they qualify in. Here are the standards that cover that area. And then here is a goal that they can have, and what implementation for me can I require here. And we will still definitely be helping them throughout this process as we go forward. But our hope is next year that our teachers are able to kind of take some of this on. Our hope is also that we don't have 56 plans next year, and that we're going to start seeing less and less of those. So it's not so overwhelming and they become far and few between versus it being an overabundance of how can we service all these kids and get all this done. So I think that's been the biggest eye opener as a building, is maybe what we're doing isn't working, and how can we shift our teaching of reading and other areas to kind of help boost this up for our kids. And that's been kind of a big eye-opening experience for all of our staff as we've tried to navigate this. But yes, the plan is hopefully next year our teachers will take more of a role in this area.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, I think you saying that you're focusing on tier 1 instruction and going through that will definitely help that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, Jessica, this is a great framework. Are you willing to share your slideshow? And
Yes.
I can post it to the network
Yeah.
so everybody can have.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I had talked to Shauna too. I'm willing to share any of the documents we have. I know that some people don't have step up proficiency scales. And so she said she would talk to districts about that if they wanted that. But if that is something people have, I'm more than happy to share what we have so far. We're still working on kindergarten because kindergarten isn't required to have an RSP until December. So we kind of put that aside for the time being. But that is something in the next month or so that we will be focusing on. But yeah, anything that we have, I'm willing to share out.
And how, with the proficiency skills, how impactful has that been to have those ready and, able to kind of copy and paste them in?
Yeah, it helped. It cut our time down significantly when it came to standards because we were able to go to each grade level. She has it all laid out already per grade level, and priority standards are already designated for you. They're highlighted in yellow. So it wasn't a lot of guesswork trying to find the things we need. We were able to just go straight to it. We knew we needed fluency goals. So we were able to read through those proficiency standards and decide what it is we needed. And we just copy pasted, and then we're able to type our goals. So it cut our time down significantly. That was one of the biggest things I think that saved us and will save teachers next year, is being able to have this document already here. And then if they're unsure of what, if they have a fourth grader on a first grade level, what does it look like that they actually need to be doing at that level? Being able to get on that proficiency standard page and know exactly, what a 3, a 4, and a 2 look like, and where did their kids fall, and then going to the next grade level. So they have them laid out in the book. We bought the books because they're like our gospel right now. We have them with us all the time, especially when we're creating assessments. I feel like a big eye opener for our teachers were that, hey, our assessments are really level 2. They're not level 3. We aren't necessarily pushing our kids to that 3 factor, which is maybe why we're not seeing the results we need on those assessments. We think we're teaching the right way, but maybe we need to add a little bit more rigor. And so that's been a help for us too, is being able to have that consistency also. All the teachers have access to this. It's the same document throughout our building. There's no more guesswork on what a 3 is. We know exactly what a 3 is, and it's the same across the building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Often we don't get to the how, like with some of these initiatives that we are, mandated. We get the what, but we don't really get the how. And so what you've shared today is so helpful, and actually the sort of boots on the ground work that has to get done to make these happen. So thank you so much for this information. And I will post, if it's okay with you, I will post the link to your slideshow inside the network along with the recording of this. So are there any other questions from our audience? Okay, well, thank you, Jessica, so much. And thank you to everyone who came today. We do have another event on Thursday. It's specifically about proficiency scales. And then another upcoming event, if you are a Step Up client, we have on November 11th, we have our client collaboration call, which is super helpful in the ongoing implementation and learning of the Step Up products. That's the curriculum management tool and the math books. So thanks everybody for coming today, and I hope to see you at an upcoming event. And Jessica, thanks again for sharing all this information with us.
You're welcome.